going to get started with the August 24th Planning Commission meeting. Our first action item is to approve the minutes from last month. They were in our packet. If there are no corrections or additions, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes of July 27th.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor of approving the minutes for the 27th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to our open forum. This portion of the meeting would be any comments that relate to the agenda. Looks like we have none. So we'll move on to our subdivision and land development applications. The first one on the list is Calvary Chapel.
The only purpose, you guys saw that last month for the zoning request for the special exception for crossing the floodplain area as defined by soils. What they just want to know is whether or not that plan could be considered a minor land development, which would allow them to have a combined preliminary final plan approval. They are doing a traffic study. That's usually one of the other differences between major and minor. And the other key difference there is for a minor land development, landscaping is at your discretion as opposed to following the full guidelines and requirements in the SALDO. So that's all they're really looking for is you guys to make a determination if you guys would be willing to consider it a minor land development, and then they'll submit it as a final plan when they come in with revisions.
What's the feeling? You okay with, are we okay with this? Ian?
I don't have a problem with mine.
Levi?
I'm okay with mine.
Susan? Okay. We probably need to make a formal recommendation.
Yeah, if you could just make a formal motion.
So the motion would be to recommend to the supervisors that.
It's your decision.
That's our decision.
Yeah, it's fully your decision. Planning Commission makes
Wow.
that
Works
determination.
out.
I know. So
We have some power, huh?
this is what you have power over, and then the landscaping for minor land developments you have power over. So you may have power over other things, but those are two I can tell you tonight.
Okay, so the motion is to accept, allow them to move forward as a minor subdivision plan. It's Calvary Chapel.
I'll make that motion.
Okay?
I'll second it.
All right. Any questions? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, now we have to take any action on landscape.
No, you can do that when they come in with a plan.
Yeah, I didn't see that on anyone that printed it off.
Yeah, I don't think they've put together a landscape plan.
There's sort of one on the back,
There's kind of one.
second page.
Okay. I mean, if you have any, like, you immediately look at it and you see something glaring, I can certainly pass that on to them
I
to
do.
save a step.
There's all this parking, but there's nothing to provide a little bit of shade in that parking lot.
Okay. So parking lot landscaping.
Oh, okay. You've been showing me a different one here.
Well, they're gonna have to meet the number of spaces in the islands, right?
Yeah, I think, I have to see whether,
So they would,
yeah.
that's where they can put some plantings.
Well, it looks like on the one row, on this, I was looking at an earlier version of it, I guess. And it looks like some of them, they have trees in between the rows of parking spaces, but I think a few more would help.
Yeah, it looks like the one kind of patched area between the two rows, that's labeled as a rain garden. So those will have some, lower type landscaping in them. But
But there's no trees in the rain garden?
they may plan on, sometimes they do a seed mix, but you guys can certainly require them to put.
Says they're leaving existing trees in the rain garden.
Separate. That's one I was looking at too.
All right, I'll just make a note that they should consider parking lot landscaping. All right, I'll pass that feedback on to them,
Good
so
luck,
at least,
okay.
that- yeah, that'll be in there when the plans are resubmitted, and then we can go from there with your landscaping comments. So,
Okay. Our next item is upward investments. Act plan, new letter.
yeah,
We've got a new,
you an updated waiver letter that Mike handed out, beginning of the meeting, so. So ultimately, I'm not sure if this has been here for any discussion before, but Upwards looking to construct, I think it's about 35,000, is that right, square foot building?
Yeah, so we were
Go
here,
ahead, give an introduction.
I think it was a couple months ago, and did our a little introduction on the project. And we discussed making corrections that in your review letter, and then coming back and doing a preliminary final, rather than going preliminary final.
Okay,
So, the construction of like a 35,000 plus square foot building, warehouse, office. There'll be public sewer, public water connections, and then stormwater controls and parking.
right, and there's already an existing building and everything on this lot. This is kind of like an accessory.
Yeah,
Expansion.
exactly. This is their current building here, and then they just want to expand their business down.
Okay, so going through the review letter, it complies with the zoning requirements. In terms of the saldo, there are 3 waivers. One is to allow the combined preliminary final. The other one is that screening in the form of evergreen and deciduous trees spaced in 2 alternating rows on 10-foot centers would be required where a non-residential use abuts an existing residential use. They do have landscaping, shown around the property, and they're proposing to use some existing vegetation that's in there. I think this was part of the discussion last time. We talked about using some trees to fill in some of the gaps in there. So it's a partial waiver to allow an alternate planning scheme along that property boundary. And then the last waiver request is number 9 in the review letter. This falls in Zone 3 of the Wellhead Protection District, which is the furthest away from the wellheads. And that section kind of requires, if you're doing infiltration and things like that, kind of a full geotech report. So they're looking for a waiver from that full report, since they will be doing public water and sewer. There's one smaller infiltration basin that has met their DEP, all the DEP requirements. You have your NPDES permit, is that right?
Yeah, I think they're still in the process.
Okay.
But I have gotten an email from DEP saying that they're through their review and everything's good.
Right, so there's processing out.
Yeah.
That's their saldo comments. Everything else that's under saldo is just kind of basic drafting items, noting the waivers on the plans, getting your outside agency approvals, getting your water and sewer confirmation from your public agencies. Stormwater, the design meets all of the requirements, except the 2 that they're requesting waivers from. One is the invert of the inlet pipe coming into the basin is coming in less than 6 inches above the basin floor. And the other one is the discharge point of the basin. It's within 5 feet of the adjoining property boundary with Rickmore Real Estate. We don't have an opposition to either waiver, but if you were to grant the one for the discharge point, one of the conditions should be that they get a letter of acknowledgement from that adjoining property owner that they are agreeable to the discharge point. Outside of that, the plan complies with all the other requirements. So I don't know if you guys have any questions for me on the review letter, for Mike on any of the waivers or the design itself.
I'm thinking there's not gonna be a problem with the proximity of the discharge.
I don't think so.
As long as I'm the builder.
You can extort whatever, however way you want to do it. I just think that because it's that close, that would be important. Can you, just kind of go through what you have landscape-wise on your plan?
Yeah, sure. So the plantings all along this side with the residential
Are existing?
are
What's existing?
not existing. So there is a good stand of trees on the residential
Fence
front.
or everything.
So we're then proposing even more on ours.
But more linear configuration
Yeah,
versus that
rather
two
than
rows,
this
which
side.
is the nature of that. But yeah, I think there was landscaping required for White Horse Glen to put in, when they went in along those property boundaries. So this would supplement that, have it on both sides of the property line.
If you do something along there like Rich did on his building, we allowed you to reduce that, but that worked out really well, I thought. And it probably has really grown in now and really matured. And it wasn't overdone, but I thought it was adequate. It looked pretty good.
Yeah, I think we actually used Rich's project as the basis for the landscaping changes that we made to the ordinance following that, so.
Jennifer said, well, the White Horse had to do a bunch when they did theirs, and the rest was ag and what have you,
Right.
So,
If you don't have any
are we
questions
okay,
or
are we
comments.
okay with the waivers? If there's no comments, we can move right to the waivers. If there are no objections to all the waivers, with the one condition that Jen added, we can take them all together, or we can take them individually. Whatever you all want to do.
I'm fine with them all along. Same here.
Okay. Make a motion to that effect in a second, and we'll take a vote on it.
Okay, I'll make a motion, keep them all three along. I'll second it.
So your motion, just to be sure, it's on all five requests. Okay.
But then she's getting the agreement from the existing one.
Yes, with that
that's a
condition. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll probably sign it tonight.
It's right there.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend to the supervisors that they grant the waivers for the 5 items that are listed in the letter dated 8/24/23 from Commonwealth Engineers. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay.
They would also be looking, if you were to consider it a recommendation to the board for conditional preliminary/final plan approval, that would be contingent upon the August 15th Technicom letter.
Okay. You heard the request. Is somebody willing to make a motion to that effect? That we would recommend conditional preliminary/final, subject to the items, the August 15, 2023 Technicom letter.
I'll make a motion.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
is Tri-County Business Park. So that's also in our packet.
Right, so Twin County Business Park, we talked about this one a couple of months back, and there were certain waivers that did recommend how to keep the layout, get confirmation on the layout, and certain stormwater controls to allow them to keep revising their stormwater plans. So this would be an extension of the existing Westbrook Drive and the industrial development that's there, creating 7 new industrial lots. Development is proposed on 6 of the 7 lots, and there's a few other lot annexations happening down the land off of Todd Road that's adjacent. Ultimately, one of the things that, we'll hit this one first, one of the things that came out of our last meeting beyond the waivers was discussion on the street, whether it was a cul-de-sac or a through street. That did go to the Board of Supervisors at their June meeting. They took at that time a unanimous position that it should be a through street. So they continued with that. They're working with, at the time of that meeting, PennDOT had indicated that it could be a right in from 10, and it could be a left or right out from Westbrook Drive. You would not be able to make a left turn in from Route 10 if you were heading north on 10. PennDOT, in their review letter that came out shortly after that meeting, expressed some concerns also with a left turning movement coming out of the development because of site distance. Did I say all that right?
Yes.
Okay. So I know, Levi, do you want to speak on your concerns based upon our conversation this morning, just to bring those back up, and then we can continue the discussion from there?
Yeah, is there not any way that the street could be only off of Westbrook Drive and not connected to Route 10? Or unless it is only a fire emergency exit gated so that there could be no through traffic unless there's an emergency? I'm afraid if we have a through street there, I'm afraid what will happen is people, they'll fly up and down the street after hours, there's no police in there. There's a lot of businesses there. I feel like the chances of theft are higher, so I would like to not see a through street.
I just know that PennDOT has expressed a want for a through street. So has the township has also expressed a want for a through street rather than extending a cul-de-sac to another cul-de-sac. Or making another cul-de-sac off of 10. I just, and
So
I
it's
think
not
the
the same.
liability of the lots that we're creating, it's just, it enhances those lots a lot more if you have a through street rather than.
Right, so just, the board is on record at the moment as of their June meeting, and it's clearly in their minutes that it was a unanimous vote at that time to keep it a through street. So any deviation from that would have to go back to the board for a change. What was talked about a little bit today, and something for the applicant to think about and consider, was PennDOT's concern from their letter was with the left turning movement out. And there was some concern in when the left turning movement out was allowed, whether you could actually configure the intersection in a way to prevent people from making that illegal left turn in. So there can be possibly some consideration given to maybe limiting it to solely a right in, right out. Because I think from prior discussions with the township, one of the key reasons for that was to try and eliminate some of the truck traffic down in the center of town at 10 and 322. So if you had a right in from 10 into the development, any trucks that would be coming off the turnpike up in Morgantown and coming down 10 could get in there without then going down through town and getting on 322. And similarly, any trucks that were leaving the development and heading on 10 South, all the way down, could just continue straight on 10 South and not have to come from 322 and make turns to continue down 10 South. So it at least would alleviate some of the truck traffic going through town, and being a limited access right in, right out somewhat discourages it from becoming a true through street, since you can't make all your turning movements there. So that was one thing that came up in some discussions today. I don't know if that would be something that is agreeable, or thoughts on the planning commission, for the applicant, for the supervisors, but just something we want to throw out there that would somewhat alleviate PennDOT's current concerns over site distance, and then try to work things out there, and would allow you can really kind of make that pork chop shape to prevent those left turns coming in and out of there. But it's just an option for thought.
The lot, what it looks like, across from lot 4, so south of the proposed road, is that a,
This little lot, is that what you're talking about?
No, lot 7, you mean?
well, does lot 7 go all the way, that goes all the way?
Yeah, it's a double lot with 2 buildings.
So the front part of that, well, basically half of that lot's kind of worthless because of the overhead. And, you know, I was at the meeting and I did see the supervisors, all 3 supported it through, or they said after they talked to the roadmaster. But I thought, Levi, I thought you talked to Donnie and he said that he would be okay if there was 2 cul-de-sacs. Did you talk to Don?
I talked to you about
No, before our last planning commission meeting, when they had this in front of us.
I think
Maybe I
I
misunderstood.
think you ultimately told me you would talk to Jay Daniel, you would talk to
That's
Don.
who I talked to.
I
Okay.
did talk to Don
Yes.
after the planning commission meeting, because I'm not sure if Jay Daniel's discussion was from years ago, under the prior iterations of this. I think back when we only had 4 lots, and there was much less land. I think there was talk then about extending the cul-de-sac. But as far as I know, since it's been blown out this far and this much, the feeling has been a through street, but
So
that's just what I've heard.
PennDOT wants to see it as a through street. I find that hard to believe that PennDOT would even care. Why would they care if it's a through street or not?
It was a good question.
Yeah.
I just know from there,
It's one more access to the road, and it's you know, one more intersection to deal with.
right, from one of their review comments, specifically stated that they would want to see that through street, rather than cul-de-sac.
My concern is, as it was the last time, is I'd be trying to find people wanting to make that left in, heading north, left in. That's what left in is.
It's going to keep people from making the illegal turn if there's no enforcement.
Yeah, well, I'm more worried about it of a potential accident, because, you know, people come up over that hill pretty quickly. With doing an offset cul-de-sac into that area where the overhead line is on lot 7, and then do like Levi was saying, and have an emergency access out to 10, might end up spending the same amount of money that you would to do the improvements on Route 10. I'm saying offset the cul-de-sac to the south.
But still come off of 10?
No, have that emergency access only off 10, and all the traffic has to come in off 322. Yeah.
So extend the cul-de-sac all the way up to here?
Right at the very end, right in that unusable part of lot 7. Is that the big lines, the big transmission lines that go through there?
Here, This, yeah, here and here.
So these are, that's the room. So you probably put a street in there. Can't put a building in there. You know what I'm saying, offset there. And still keep the road configuration the way it is, and then just do an emergency access. Gated. I don't think it's gonna add a whole lot to the cost. There's gonna be a little bit of an inconvenience for everybody coming south. So, and I guess we're pushing, they're gonna make a right turn on Todd, and that doesn't have safe stopping distance probably either. And when you're making that right turn on the Todd, coming over there, that's probably safe stopping distance at like an 80% of the traffic speed, probably unsafe too. So the right in probably is,
Well, if there's going to be any change to not require the 3 street, it's got to go back to the board again, because the board's on record at their June meeting indicating 3 street. So, I mean, if that's something the planning commission wants to put back up there, it would have to go back. You know, the applicant would have to request to be put back on the board agenda for further discussion of it. If they do a cul-de-sac, there are at least 2 waivers that I saw from the Saldo that would be required. One is for the length of the cul-de-sac. The Saldo limits cul-de-sac lengths to be 800 feet. This would end up being about over 3,000, close to 3,500. The existing cul-de-sac is 1,500 feet long. This is adding about another 2,000 feet or so, so it would be a waiver for that. And our cul-de-sac design requirements also call for a left offset hole with a center planting island. So they would need a modification from that requirement, because you're definitely not going to want the planting island where the trucks are spinning around.
will that allow the radius to tighten up a little bit? If you know, what's the radius? 60?
60 right of way, 50 paved. So I know they would need a waiver for those 2 things.
Where does Ben go? Does Ben go have access to Route 10?
They were right in, I think.
Did you ever talk to them about possibly doing something from 10 through Ben, go down to Powell Road?
We had not, but if we did, I'm pretty sure that would wipe out their entrance. And that whole thing would have to be re-approved.
I'm sure they have a problem on Route 10 themselves.
Isn't that limited?
Yes.
Well,
That's limited on Route 10.
Is it for NACO?
Yeah, I seem to think I remember seeing a sign there.
They might not have the same site distance issues for that entrance, just because they're, to me, that looks like they're at the top of it.
Yeah, they're at the top.
So they can see both ways.
I was surprised that they didn't have the site distance. I really wouldn't.
You have a grading plan? You have a grading plan?
I don't know if it's like some of the steep slopes.
The owners really, they have to have that access? Is that like important to them? Or as I know it is, yes.
So this is, you can kind of see Banco's entrance is right at.
It's right at the
Yeah.
crest.
So this starts along that way, and this starts along that
See it right there.
way. So here's their Banco's entrance, and here's the top of it right there.
They're right at the top.
Yeah.
Where again is it? How many feet is that from the entrance you proposed?
And you're showing that as right in, right out. That's what you're currently showing here, I guess.
Our entrance,
Yeah,
You were sure.
right in, right out, and a left out.
okay. And what PennDOT's saying,
They're, PennDOT, and I'm in the process of communicating with them to figure out if they all 7 are changing their stance on a left out. We feel like we have the site distance to meet a left out.
well, it's kind of a moot point if 2 supervisors don't want to make a change. I mean, it's really, they didn't spend any time on it at that meeting. They were like, yep, we talked to them, we talked to Don, they wanted through street, and they just went on with it. But if, I mean, I don't know how the rest of you feel. I mean,
Well, if they want to 3, it doesn't matter how they feel of it.
yeah, and it doesn't. I mean, if they're having, if for some reason they're having second thoughts, it's up to them to change it.
If, for other feedback, if the board continues and requires the through street, do you have a preference or opinion on a right in, right out versus a right in, left and right out? If you feel, do you feel that eliminating that ability to turn left out here would provide any safety benefits or reduction in the use of it as a through street? And
How do you get a left out but not a left in? If you meet the safe stopping distance to make a left out, why don't you have the safe stopping distance for a left in? Or is that the stacking of?
It is.
It's a stacking.
It's preventing a vehicle from sitting on 10, waiting to get going through.
That makes sense.
What was the board's justification for wanting a through street?
I think it has to do with trying to reduce traffic going through the center of town at 10 and 322, in part, and the length of the cul-de-sac.
All I recall him saying is, we talked to the roadmaster and he preferred to have a through road. He's okay, or he's okay with the through road. I think that's what he said.
Well, he's okay, but that isn't the same as, it's the best or only way to do it. So,
Oh, I hear you.
Right, and I wasn't there, so I can't comment on it, I just know it was conveyed back, and it's in the minutes, but I don't think there's any discussion explained in the minutes. So do we want to offer anything back to them that they should reconsider?
I mean, I think they made up their mind, I don't think we offer them to change their minds. If the roadmaster goes to our through street,
Well, I mean, there's been some concerns expressed since then, I believe, right? Do I want some of the business?
After last time this was here, I actually thought it's gonna come here before it goes to the supervisors again, or I would have said a little more than that. So I didn't realize it's going to the supervisors before they come back with.
Yeah, there are waivers that they requested before, and that went to the supervisors at the next meeting, so they would know how to continue developing their plans. So, the waivers that had been granted were about the center line radii, scale of the plans, peak rates for POI 2, and things like that, so that they were kind of things that needed to be determined, so they could move on with the layout and stuff as is. So that's why it went to the board for those items.
So then why do we have to give an opinion on left out? Because that was what was there previously. The left out was right in, right out, left out. That's what it always was, right?
Right. I'm just in the discussions I had with Warren earlier today after the additional concerns and stuff were raised and what the board decision was before is, talking about the need and reasons for that entrance. And it was mentioned that the primary benefits of the traffic reduction could be seen from that right in and a right out, and that, if it would address some of the through traffic concerns and things like that, it may be a balance to allow them to have the right in, right out, but eliminate that left out if that causes some of the safety concerns and through traffic concerns. It's kind of like a balance between planning commission concerns and.
How wide's the road? How wide's the street?
26 feet.
So let me understand this. One of their reasons was to alleviate the traffic in town. So basically to make this what the opposition is a cut through on a 26-foot wide street.
I think it was
Not
to
sure
eliminate
that's-
truck traffic for the development, not necessarily all traffic.
So this road's going to be a township road.
As far as I know, they dedicated the other portion of Westbrook Drive, was dedicated within the last couple of years since we're finished up, and that was dedicated.
I didn't see that in the last scene.
So Jan, separating it completely is an option either.
No, because they can't get the full movements in and out into there. So anybody that would be coming north on 10 wouldn't be able to get in there. They would have to go up, find somewhere, to turn around or go through town and cut up Poplar or Reservoir, to come back down. So I don't think a new cul-de-sac off of 10 would be an option.
Does the decel have to take any land from that adjacent property owner?
On the other side?
On the north side, on the west side of 10, north side of your entrance.
You're talking like over here? Is that?
No, it would be that little piece right there to your, that property right here.
Here? No, it doesn't.
Doesn't, okay.
All right, while you guys think on that traffic, we can just hit the other review letter comments. The zoning ordinance talks about the truck circulation plans and lighting. They need to provide a lighting plan. Truck circulation, they need to be able to show that the trucks can turn in and out of the individual lots without crossing, the center line of the road. Going into the Saldo, they need to show that there can be adequate water pressure through there. They're working on their sewage planning module and getting water and sewer approvals. There's a couple traffic-related comments that as they revise the traffic study and work through PennDOT will be addressed. Streetlights, we said approval from TPNL for the encroachment on the transmission right-of-way that we were talking about. With regards to landscaping, they have to revise some of their required calculations on the plan. But what they did want some feedback on would be the general concept of the landscaping that's provided in terms of buffers, in terms of, usually our ordinance talks about street trees being spaced every 40 to 50 feet. They kind of more have a few groupings, street trees as they move along, as opposed to your tree. So any comments that you would have in terms of the landscaping concept, if there's areas that you think are there, you do need to provide some landscaping around that single lot that's to the north, that existing residential lot, screening buffer there. But any other tree comments that they can use as they revise that before they come in for a kind of final approval on the landscaping plan would be good. From a stormwater standpoint, you know, they have some tweaks to make to get things in compliance and show compliance with the Valley. And the storm sewer design, you know, but they're agreeable to kind of work through those. Under general comments, it's a lot of drafting, just cleanup items, a few discrepancies to work out, and just try to lump all those together. And then number 2 is a lot of what will be addressed as part of the final plan submission, with your outside agency reviews. So, are there any comments generally on the landscaping or anything else beyond the street for the moment, just so we can kind of keep the dialogue going and we can go back to the street?
Got any comments on landscaping? What do you think? Are we okay with what we're seeing?
Since the font on my version is
I agree. Did you print, that's where I was looking, it's a little easier. Did you print yours off on 11 by 17? Yeah, anyways.
No, I got no policies done on.
Oh, they plotted on,
Yeah.
okay.
that's what I have, and it's still a tiny unreadable.
Yeah, I plotted full
Like, I
size.
don't know, does that have the landscape on it?
Yeah, I have
If you
it.
want to bring that a little closer
Yeah,
to
that
them,
might
just
be
see if
better.
anything jumps out, you know.
People want to see the 3 sheets.
The kind of key things just to look at is the configuration along the street itself, and then, you know, maybe buffers to adjoining properties. They are, they'll get pretty close, they have some adjustments.
I can make a recommendation to reduce
But
that.
those trees get shifted to address the habitat, they're pretty close to meeting everything. Yeah, and then they're missing like a few things there, probably, but they didn't make what they're replacing the house, so they will shift those to the other categories. I think we should be able to come pretty close, fully meeting everything.
So what's the plan?
And send it along.
I believe there is a requirement that.
We asked, but if the
Plans
applicant wants
down
to
years after they've put the
go
plan,
back and ask.
that's to be replaced.
But I think we can, or,
That is a good question.
they may be that question, that you guys enforcement.
I would-
consider. The
I would-
applicant has to enforce it.
I would try and force it.
I would have to
Yeah,
find
I'm not
out.
sure which that
Who's
goes.
required?
Respect to the decision.
Yeah. I know, I keep getting warned in the office.
You have some advantages.
They left the metal pages around the roof. Everything I asked them kind of what to consider that all down, like these portraits. And then I don't know.
I'll make a suggestion to replace.
You don't have to get rid of all of them.
Yeah.
have to
What
put
are you
them all.
trying to talk them into burlap balls? Burlap?
No, I was talking about the holly, that there was a lot of holly.
Okay.
And I was like, why does this keep coming up as a big fiber looking thing? Oh, it's okay, they have like 29 of them.
29 what?
Holly.
Hollies, okay.
So are we comfortable with what we're seeing on the plans for landscape? Okay.
Yeah. just-
There is some we still have to do.
Yeah, there's still tweaks, and I think
Buffering.
where,
Yeah.
your landscape architect had some potential waivers noted in some of the other categories with the woodland replacement adjustment.
Right.
I think if she fills in those categories, you know, meet all of those and kind of keeps the general configuration that's there, you know, that should be generally agreeable to the planning commission, so
Okay.
see if you can eliminate those waiver requests, if that just.
So you okay? You okay? Then I guess we can recommend conditional preliminary, if that's,
Do we want to, I mean, it's up to you guys, unless you want the configuration at 10, more feedback from PennDOT
what,
on that.
you still, you don't have your HOP,
No, that's,
so
like I
if
said,
you have
they're-
a comment letter.
we're addressing the latest comment letter from PennDOT, and this one comment about a left turn out came up. So we're in communication to clarify why on some of that is not an issue, or it is an issue for them.
I mean, personally, I'm okay with recommending conditional preliminary, but I'd also like to ask, you know, however, the supervisors, after they see that, or we see it, we'll see it, that they take another look at what's happening there on 10. I mean, I respect their opinion, not, you know, we obviously can't force them to change something, but I mean, if we think that they should maybe step back and take another look at it, and if they stay with a through road, that's fine. It's just my opinion. Maybe the rest of you feel like maybe you're okay with the through road.
You were at the meeting, and how they sound?
That was real quick. I mean, it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of discussion. It was just like, I mean, like I said earlier, I recall them saying that they had a discussion with the roadmaster, and you know, he was okay with it through
Was Levi's concerns ever brought up?
the. I have no idea. It was not at that meeting.
I know they were written out in, I believe I have them written out in the minutes, and, whenever I send over, a summary and things, those get noted and conveyed. But I don't know to what point, if any, in the Garrison King, they weren't specifically discussed verbally.
I mean, at that meeting, they weren't discussed. I'm not sure I was at the work session that month. But in the business meeting, that was the only comment they made, took action on.
Then we recommend in there with special note that we'd like to take a look at it.
I guess we can request, but there's also something on the applicant's side that, they were given, approval to make it a through road, and the applicant might choose to not want to revisit that.
All right.
I'm not sure, as we were talking about, we're not sure legally, how it can go if the applicant doesn't.
Well, we're not going to change PennDOT's mind, whatever it is, go anyway.
Well, what about addressing Levi's concerns from another perspective? If it's gonna be a through road, then what about having some other kind of enforcement? I mean, if this concern is about, after hours traffic in there and potential for theft and people just using it as a place to cruise, what's the alternative for addressing those concerns without changing the way the road's constructed?
They're valid points. I don't know whether they consider them or not.
I'm sure there's streetlights, that you can require, 'cause I think street lighting is kind of left up in somewhat in cellular to discretion, and they have to be at intersections, but I think other locations are at discretion, so that can be something, that's put in there to at least provide more light and visibility. Still doesn't necessarily help, if it's nighttime and nobody's around, still to see things, but, keeping things lit sometimes is helpful, but beyond that, I'm not sure what else there is.
I guess from our standpoint, from the planning commission, if the consensus is that there's still a concern, we can just convey that to the supervisors that, we still have some concerns about what's going on there at that intersection. And however it falls, it falls. But we don't have the power to force them to do it, obviously.
We don't want to hold these guys up any longer.
Excuse me?
We don't want to hold these guys up any longer either.
I mean, it's certainly something you can put in your motion if you are going to make a motion. That the board, as I think you worded, Carrie, that the board take another look at it. And then we can speak to that, whether the solicitor, whether, since that is already on record from the board, if that's something that the applicant would have to agree to, the board be looking at that I don't know the answer to. I didn't talk to that today on that.
So is that how we'd like to proceed? A motion to recommend conditional preliminary with the comment that the planning commission still has concerns with the intersection, and I guess that's where we would stop.
I'm not against the development at all, so I don't want to hold that.
No, it's concerned very well, so.
I don't know how else to work, we'll have a meeting on that.
So is there an interest to make that motion to grant preliminary, conditional preliminary approval to the supervisors with the comment, Jen's like, recommended with the comment that the planning commission still has concerns about that road being a through road.
I'll make a motion to give us time
I see nodding his head, yes, so does that mean that that's a second?
That's my own second.
So we need a motion, we have a motion, we need a second. We don't have a second, so it dies. That's,
Yes, unless somebody else wants to make another form of motion,
Yeah.
and if not, then they can go back and revise the plans, you know, per the review letter, and see if there's additional feedback from PennDOT, you know, that impacts that design there at all. And as for the board reconsidering, you know, you can speak about whether, you know, if the planning commission wants to recommend that, you guys can here, and then that could be conveyed to Beth, and Beth would need to make a determination of whether or not the applicant needs to support or allow that reconsideration. I can't guarantee that it can just go from you to them.
It is going up to the supervisor meeting.
That is
It's already approved, so it won't.
what would,
So if I go to the next supervisor meeting and voice my concern, it would be a good thing.
I think we would need to talk to Beth to see if the planning commission's recommendation or request, or one that would come from the supervisor themselves, if they can revisit that without the applicant's consent. You know, if the applicant says, no, you told me it was you wanted a through street, I want a through street, and that's how they want to proceed, they have the right, because the board's on record as saying that. You know, if they were to want to allow a reconsideration of that, you know, they can request that and go before that on their own. I don't know whether, if they don't want that, if you guys or supervisors saying, we want to reconsider this, if they can go back on a decision that they already made without the applicant's consent, and that's what we would need to ask the solicitor. So it could possibly be on the agenda, and once I would have feedback on that from Beth, we can certainly let you know. But I think the solicitor would need to weigh in on how those prior decisions get revisited.
what was it that you requested in? It was just a recommendation, correct? It wasn't,
We wanted direction.
so the direction that you were given,
Whether it was a through road or a cul-de-sac.
okay, what do we want to do?
You know, I don't know if it makes any difference, but I believe PennDOT is either just gonna say no left out, and we have to go just right in, right out, but I don't think they're gonna squash the whole entrance.
The township could. If the supervisors want to squash it,
How's that?
they can
Works
squash
out,
it.
yeah.
But, and it appears that they don't want to do that. So this is a major land development, so it's got to come back for final. And if we don't move it forward with a recommendation for preliminary, it's going to come back for preliminary.
Yes.
So, do we want to just hold it up until, you know, the supervisors take another look at it, or?
Nothing to do, because you have a business there.
Is the township going to get in trouble for doing that?
I'm not sure, that's a Beth answer, Beth has to answer
Yeah,
that.
that's what,
They were given one direction,
Right, so you guys can make your, if that's your recommendation, if you want this board to look at it again, that can be passed along, but that will need to weigh in on if the applicant is not agreeable to that reconsideration, whether the township can reconsider it and potentially change the direction that they gave at the June meeting. Legally, I'm not sure how that works, you know, if they've already given a direction and they proceeded down that route, you know, whether that can be changed or not. So, that.
There's nothing in anywhere that the street could actually be closed off on the bottom side every night? Is that an option? Street could actually close up at night, all the time?
I would think that may be a safety issue, you know, if it's closed off and, you know, you can't see that.
If the
Yeah, I'm not
township, if
sure.
the township takes dedication of the street, it becomes a private street. So can the township close off, or it becomes a township street, a public street?
That's what,
Yeah.
that's what.
So I'm not, can the township close off a public street every night? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would think you could,
Down in
but,
Westchester, the neighbors tried to close off the Golden Street come off of, Root there. They were putting signs up, and, we just put up, say, township official told them, they just, there's a good food street, they're going to do. And, somebody fought because they should drive through there, and they weren't allowed to do it. Once the public street is open, the public street, and they're ready to close it off.
What we could recommend preliminary approval with the condition that, or ask that they clearly look at it.
What if they wouldn't dedicate it?
Oh, I'm sure you guys don't, owners don't want to have that as a private street.
A private street,
Yeah.
But it is a business park, and if all the business has some kind of association that takes care of the maintenance.
right, well, I think that's what pushed, Westbrook Drive itself had been private and not dedicated from like 2003, when it was built, up until, it was somewhere around,
4 years ago.
yeah, somewhere in there that they said, we're done trying to take care of this, we want to get this finished up, and they actually, I think, pulled the security that was still held from the original developer, you know, to get that street finished and turned over.
But it might benefit all the businesses back there, if they want to keep up the maintenance on the road, then you have the ability to close it off.
Yeah, I just
But
don't
they
think
have
that's
put-
likely because they fought to
But
get
then
it dedicated in the first place.
they have to create an association and mechanism to, you know, collect the fees, and already half the road's not,
I think it's a pretty-
they're not gonna agree to that. I would, if I was a business person, and the street became public, and now I'm gonna be asked to pay to maintain the street, and undedicated.
Well, if I had a business back on the street and I was worried, concerned about, my stuff getting stolen or, vandalism, if all the businesses would agree to, maybe it's a good, it's not that big of a deal, put them together,
But you're talking about a dedicated street, so the township would have to agree to turn it back.
they have to dedicate it though?
Well, the first half is dedicated. So the
Oh,
second,
it already is,
Yeah.
I thought they, I knew they did that.
no, to the first cul-de-sac,
That's
that
dedicated.
Okay,
and that was-
I didn't think that was,
Yeah.
I thought that was private right now.
No, it was dedicated at the request of the owners along there
Okay.
about 4 years ago, because they had maintained it prior to that, so. So I think your options at this point are either one, as the initial motion that floated around was to recommend conditional preliminary based upon Technicon's letter, and if you want to include the board reconsidering their position. And again, the solicitor would need to weigh in on, you know, reconsidering that based upon the applicant's views. Or two, waiting on any recommendation for conditional plan approval until there's any more feedback or discussion from PennDOT. They address some of the review letter comments in here. And with waiting, you can still choose to see if the board can re-look at it, again, as determined by the solicitor. So it's kind of a matter of, one, do you want the board to look at it or not if the solicitor allows? And two, do you or don't you want to make a recommendation for conditional preliminary at this time?
Probably the best way is to get them to look at it again, period, is to do what the first motion was. There's gonna be something there to let them know. They really can look at it.
To reconsider the direction. So it's gonna,
At the same time, you don't want to help either.
most planning commissions don't care about the applicant's timeline, but this will probably add another month to your timeline. Do you have any businesses that you're signed up to go in there? You have two, and they're ready to start as soon as you have final approval, and improvements are done.
Correct. And I think it's important to point out, we took direction from the board and from the township to put this as a through road before we finalize this plan. So we, based on that feedback, that's why we have what we have. Now to go back and try and change it is really going to put a crimp in the works and cost us more.
I understand.
And the bottom line is, PennDOT's going to mandate what has to happen at that intersection.
You're right.
So it may very well change. We're just not sure what they're going to come up with.
You're right, the end of the day, PennDOT says what
They
happens.
control it,
Yeah.
quite right. So that may be an issue that may be taken care of, and you guys don't have to worry about too much, and the supervisors don't have to worry about too much. Ultimately, we've got to satisfy PennDOT from a safety standpoint.
PennDOT doesn't have to say anything, you know. You know, you're going to say that PennDOT.
Well, that's allowed.
Yeah.
So if we sit on this and wait until, when do you expect to hear back from PennDOT? Any day.
Yeah, tomorrow.
You're pretty far into it, so I would imagine 30 days. I mean,
I would do it sooner than that. I did put it out to some people in the doc.
so what do we want to do here?
Will we make the motion?
Sure. There's no motion.
The first one.
It failed, so you can make any kind of motion you want. I see both sides here. I understand the concerns and the issues with the intersection, but it's also not fair to them that they're being held up when they were given direction but from the supervisors. But you know, we can, depending on what Beth says, the supervisors may be able to change their direction. I don't know. But, you know, we can have discussions with the supervisors. We can, you can come to the next meeting and, because this will, if we move this forward as a recommendation for preliminary, it will be on
It would definitely be on the agenda.
on the second Wednesday's agenda.
Is there a workshop this month?
Probably. Yeah, it's the first Wednesday. You can come to the workshop. Excuse me?
What is the workshop? I never remember.
Just to talk
A
about.
week before, it's the first Wednesday.
Just to talk about the.
They talk about the items that are going to be on the agenda for the next week, so that would probably be the place to have the discussion. And, you know, we could request that they put that on their work session agenda.
Can we make a motion with the recommendation that they put on the workshop agenda? Is that feasible or not?
Yeah, and then Beth can weigh in on it, and if Beth's opinion is that, no, you can't go back on this, then at their work session, they just share that opinion.
If you can tell me why they can't.
So it's only preliminary, I mean, it's not open, but it would be a preliminary recommendation. There's still a final.
Yeah, I really feel bad about it. But I wish it could be on one street, but I don't know, say that.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we should preliminary, but with the recommendation that they put it on their workshop agenda. To discuss for discussion.
To revisit.
To revisit the road.
And if you share, if this moves forward and you share that with Beth, she can have an opinion for the work session meeting.
All right, so I have to recommend that the Board of Supervisors grant conditional preliminary plan approval contingent upon, we would also want it on our August 22nd review letter, and that the BOS reconsider allowing this to be a cul-de-sac street with the extension of Westbrook Drive and an emergency access to Route 10 with discussion at the workshop.
Is that acceptable to your motion?
Yes.
Okay. We have a second? Okay, we have a
Is
second.
that Susan?
Susan. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much.
That's your little pleasure.
Thanks for your consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, go on. That's pretty good.
I didn't know how well it would work trying to do the discussion in this, so right now it's working. Some things are bigger.
We have no zoning hearing board or conditional use applications. We have no other business. And we're at the open forum on any matters. Jared, it looks like you're it, so if you have nothing to say, we're going to move on.
Anything?
He's shaking his head, right? Superintendents. One of the things that's probably going to be coming up here in the near future is to get started on the comp plan. And I assume it's going to be like led by the planning commission that we will coordinate it. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind that might be coming. You know,
Well, Brandywine Conservancy was actively involved in this before, or are they going to be again, or?
Well, some of the conversation was that, do we really need to have a planner involved with it? Could we use our engineering firm and our solicitor? It depends on how expensive we want to see the comp plan changed. But that's the supervisor's decision, it's not ours. They're going to decide on it. The reason why the Conservancy, they got a grant to get paid for the last time. And I don't know if those grants are available anymore or not. And I know there's some community members that are interested in being a part of the committee. The other question is for whether it's going to continue as a joint comp plan. So I thought that Warren was going to reach out to Humber Borough and see if they're interested. So just kind of keep that on your radar that might be coming up.
Well, like I brought up at the town hall meeting, I still see a problem that you spend a lot of time creating a comp plan or strategic plan, any of those types of plans, if you don't use them, it's kind of a waste of time. And to my knowledge, there hasn't been anyone looking at that comprehensive plan since maybe a year or two after it was finished. So all of those tasks, I don't know what the status of those things is now. Does anybody?
Probably not.
Probably
And-
not.
And my opinion is, and I don't know how you do it in your township, but that should really be the charge of the manager to make sure that all those action items, get accomplished, or the manager will get the people involved that need to accomplish it. And I don't think the supervisors are going to want to put it on their plate to monitor if that's really a manager job. That's, with my experience, that's who usually keeps track of the items being done and make sure they
Okay,
get
and who
done.
oversees the management?
Well, supervisors, obviously.
Exactly, so that hasn't been done for the last 6 or 7 years.
It may not have been done since the comp plan was enacted in 2015.
So I think there was some initial looking at those tasks, because I remember there were some updates of things that had gotten completed on that task list. But I haven't heard anything for a number of years, so I don't think anybody was looking at it. Or there was anybody on the board who was reminding the manager that that was something that they were expected to do.
Well, maybe it's something that should be put either on the supervisor's radar or our radar as a planning commission, that every quarter, or whatever the timeline is that's adequate, that the manager provides us with an update, or provides them with an update to assess what has been accomplished and what hasn't been accomplished. I mean, it's a very good point.
I
It's a
think
very
that
good point
should
that you
happen.
made.
I think that, and I think it needs to happen before we start working on another one.
Right, a full update,
Right.
provided so you know where you're starting, and
Exactly.
then move on to the next
Yeah,
one.
you know, are there things that have not been accomplished that
Sure.
might still be important, that we need to make sure are on the list for the next time?
What if we'd ask Chrissy to provide us with an update, the comp plan with the items up to date, right next to the ones that have been accomplished, but make sure we know what the expectation was, so we can see.
Well, as I recall from that list, there was the task, there was, a determination whether it was short-term, mid-range,
Right, yeah.
long-term, who was responsible for it, either an individual or a committee or the board, supervisors, or more than one of those. And then whether, when it was completed. And so I think that spreadsheet would give us a lot of information on
So,
what's been done.
do you think we should, so I think what I'm hearing is we should ask for the status of the items on the spreadsheet, on the action items.
Get the whole spreadsheet and the status of each item, whether it was completed, when it was completed,
It was partially completed.
partially completed, or
I think that's a reasonable ask.
Yeah, I wrote
You
that
got
up.
that in the minutes?
Yeah, I did our kind of discussion, it's gonna be time to work on it, discussion over who should be involved, will it continue to be a joint plan, that it's unknown, what the status are, and before starting revisions. An update of the current status should be provided from the township office.
because one of the reasons that we thought it was a good idea to do a joint plan was because of the requirement for every municipality to have every kind of housing, and,
Well, not just housing, but everything's,
yeah,
everything.
but that was divided up between the borough and the township on certain types of uses.
Correct.
And if we don't do the joint plan, that,
If we don't do it, we'll have some major zoning changes to make, because we would have to accommodate what we push over, so will the borough. And theirs is probably more expensive because
They don't
Yes, they don't have-
space
they don't have
to
space.
do things.
So we okay with, let's take a look at that, maybe at our next meeting, and
I should come,
change, like if something, like a new comp plan gets approved or whatever they come up with a new one, with the direction, does that change some of the wording of the ordinance?
It can,
You can.
it can change zoning.
Because we spent 2 years putting that comp plan together, and then it was another year and a half, 2 years to work on the zoning
Does
changes.
the comp plan actually tells what's allowed, what's not allowed, is that what it is?
The comp plan is like a guide from
Yeah,
what.
it's kind of like a strategic plan for the township.
Yeah.
The
It
comp-
it
your
drives
comp
the
plan,
zoning.
it drives the zoning, exactly.
And, well,
But multiple people should be involved in that, because like, Brian, you know, the supervisor should know what's in the comp plan, you know, what properties are targeted. We had 3 specific properties that were kind of like sitting around, nothing was being done with them. And those 3 properties were targeted for trying to get a useful, a viable use for those 3, so they weren't sitting there vacant, you know? But that works with the zoning officer too, because when an application would come in, or an agreement of sale, like for this property, can I do yada, 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 you know, multiple people were involved, the planning commission knew exactly what was in the comp plan, what, all of those things, so I don't think it's just specifically one person, I think it's multiple people, you know, knowing.
Right,
Yeah.
what the intent of the
oh yeah, it's not just planning.
But I mean, it's not just,
It should be public too.
yeah, it should be public, but I mean, it's
Should be all levels.
all levels, like not just the manager, not just the planning commission, it should be everyone should know.
Well, sewer and water,
Oh,
sewer
yeah.
and water should also be a part of it, because we don't know what their expansion desires are into the future, and if there should be some consistency between township growth areas and, you know, sewer and water growth areas. But it's something that the township's got to get started on, you know, pretty soon. It's fun.
So that's the first thing, it's not what the borough is.
Yeah, supposedly, I thought the supervisors, after the last meeting, were going to reach out, have Warren reach out to the borough to see if they're still interested. Yeah, because both municipalities get along, which is past history that wasn't working so well. Okay, is there anything else? Are the dates for September on the last page? If there's nothing else, you need a motion to adjourn.
I'll say.
All in favor?
Aye.